everybody. It's Mark with Hot Thunder here to do an Axis Empires revival. I'm going to preview this here in this video. Got a little background music. I got a little AI generated comrades here. Notice how they all look the same, so that's why I'm calling them the tribe. And you guys will know why I'm calling them that too if you've been paying attention. So I've got the setup here, and the first thing I want to do before I go over the current situation on the map, I want to review some new rules. They're not really new rules. They're actually some errata rules that have recently come out. Well, not too recently, but it took long enough to get them, so it might as well be recently. So, yeah, without further ado, let me proceed to that. Hold on a second. All right, so this is the errata as of June 1st, 2025. This does include some June 2024 errata, so I double-checked to make sure it's all in my rule books. I've pasted it, copied and pasted inside my PDF versions here. So you can see there's one of the references for SK here. So if we go through this, let's take a look. Where are those rules here? These are the rule books. Here we go. All right. So there's a couple of minor omissions here. Some of these are not really recent. Clarification of some movement restrictions on the southern end of the map. Some changes to the Fall of France scenario. These are old scenarios we don't need to worry ourselves with here. Some stuff in the Descenso rulebook related to allies supporting resistance. You used to be able to take off Kwangtung steps for that. You can't anymore. But we're not playing Descenso. Most of the rules related to that could affect this game are related to the SK rules. There's a couple of clarifications to the combat procedure here. What happens when you have a success and need to reconstitute a task force if they decide to intercept it again. Things like that. Couple of mistakes in the rule book. It's pretty light, really. There's some DOD rules here, some changes to the map and the overlays, which I think have been fixed by Frank in the actual vassal module. I did not change vassal modules. I'm still using the old one, but it shouldn't make any difference to the play of this game. So I just wanted you to be aware of those. If you want to find these rule adjustments, they're in the file section of Totaler Krieg Ultimate Edition, in the file section there on Board Game Geek. All right, so now we need to take an overview and take a look at what has transpired. And it's been 2 years, so we really have to kind of reconstitute where we were at. The good news about Axis Empires, though, is that it's not hard to do that because you do have the card selection situation here. I'm only doing TK in this review or this playthrough. So all of the, let's go ahead and put the marker thing on. All of these had already been played last time in the summer of 43. Now, remember, we're actually a year behind schedule because this was an extended game. So we can sort of take a look at this as if it's the end of 42, which is a more accurate way to look at where we stand. So Case Blue has been played. Operation Crusader had occurred. I think there were some counterattacks the British did in the south here. And the usual play, this is actually maybe a turn early. You know, the Soviets want to get their Red Air Force in as soon as they possibly can. So they got that in. Looking at the overall situation then, we can see that, well, the Axis had a pretty strong push into Russia, but they never really got to Moscow or Rostov. They did fight through to take Crimea. That was a very tough battle, and that was a success. There was another fight over here, though, for Alexandria that was not a success for the Axis, and you can see here that looks like the Allies fended them off pretty successfully here. Can't remember exactly what happened, but we can see that historically here, we have the Western Allies in a really strong position here. And one of the detrimental aspects, though, is the fact that because it was a long war, generally Germany has a chance to try to zip in here and get a hold of some of the Middle East. So they're into Baghdad. Kuwait is still British, barely. Well, it looks like they have some defenses here. Let's zoom in on this. Yeah, okay. So Italian, German forces here, but not very strong. And some allied colonials there. And the Persians have been protected by the Russians successfully. So it doesn't look like the Axis will get any more stuff down here. They did take Spain, if you'll recall. Spain and Portugal have been conquered. This is not unusual in a long, extended game where the outbreak of total war is delayed by a year and France was attacked first. So France is occupied here. Spain looks like it activated as an Axis country. And take a look at the force pools. Yeah, we'll see that there's some Spanish units in here. Here's some Italians. I need to sort this out. Finnish units here. What happened to Finland? It doesn't look like it's doing very well. Let's see. Oh, yeah. The Russians had pushed in pretty strongly there, but still being held by the Germans, but they have a huge garrison up there. And if they ever get a decent blitz attack on this, that will be forfeit. It can't be held if there's a blitz marker put inside the city. So that's a weakness that the Germans have there. Okay, so we're essentially getting right into the United States really starting to get into this war. You can see that here they're just about to play the Arsenal of Democracy, which is, they could play the other one, but I don't think it's crucial to play that. It's pretty rare that you do want to play that, but the other one is the victory program. It's quite a heavy penalty to play the victory program. So as long as London is still held and they still have a cross-channel invasion, it's very possible. I think one of the things to keep in mind for the Western Allies in particular is if they don't go for the victory program, they really can only fight, I would say, a two-front war. It's really not possible to fight on three fronts very effectively. So you'll see us historically, what they did is they collapsed down to one front in Tunisia, eventually to cross in Italy, and they had a front here, and eventually the cross-channel invasion front here. That was two fronts. Here right now, they're operating on this main front, and they'll have the opportunity to have one more front. So what you have to watch out for is getting too bogged down in this fight over here with a lot of units, logistics markers, and things like that. Because what can happen is the Allies can then have all these guys way over here. It takes forever to get them back. You don't want to ever try to use the fleet train here, usually in the European theater, when especially it's a European-only game. So you got to break them down and transport them to Alexandria. Then they have to be able to get somewhere reasonable, which means you got to take, well, Toronto, really. You need to be able to get them to the mainland, and it just takes a long time. Whereas if you start here in Egypt and drive across to take this in a reasonable amount of time, which can be done, I'd say, you can then attack and take out Italy. But another option in this game will be to use Avalanche to take out Spain and do an early invasion here in Spain, not get too bogged down in the Mediterranean, and combine this with a sort of an attack into northern Italy and right into France without actually doing an overlord type of invasion or holding that in reserve and trying to maintain again the two fronts. It's much better to do two fronts. It's also much better for the allies. In this case, they have a lot of synergy if they work together. You need a British unit in there with an American unit and vice versa so that you can get use of the air power for either side. As long as one side's attacking, the HQs for one side and the air power for one side will work with the friendly units, the Americans, if you have a British step in the attack, and vice versa. It's not as useful, maybe as it might be in some other games, for the Americans and the Brits to be attacking in separate groups. So it will be useful, I think, to get. I don't know if we'll wind up with any Americans here, but eventually we'll want to join up with the Brits and have a joint force, possibly here. It's a little trickier to decide the best angle of attack, and I think that's one of the reasons the Allies can get into trouble, is by getting overextended when in a long war like this. On the other hand, though, what happens is Russia tends to be, if it survives, a little bit stronger than it would be in the regular game that starts in the usual time frame, so that the Germans will have to pour more into the Russian front than they would have normally liked to do. So that's kind of where we're at with the overview here. What is the score? Let's take a look at the strategic trackers. All right. I've got Tehran. I guess I put that in there to show that the Germans don't have it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they're right at 9 here, which is a pretty good number. The strategic value is 3. That's where it should be, right? It's at 2. Maybe now it's 3. I'll have to double check that. But if it's at 3, then we're going to want to get in our... Now, I've taken Euro bombers, but I think what we're going to want to do for the Germans is to have them get their card for Festung Europa out there as soon as possible, because they certainly don't want to lose even one of those strategic points at this stage, because that will knock them back down to 2. 2's not bad, but 3 is a lot stronger. So the Allies will be looking to do this. And where is a weak point for the Allies to take such a point? They don't really have a lot of weak points, these Germans, at this stage. I think it was really critical for them to have taken Sevastopol back in the last summertime turn. And while they didn't get Cairo, they did get that. So there's not a lot of good places here for the Allies to try to snag a spare objective hex away from the Germans. That being said, it's not impossible. The thing is, I don't think I have a bomber yet. Bomber would be useful, but it only counts at the end of the game anyway, so that wouldn't affect things now for strategic value. So that's kind of the situation. Looks like the Germans will be at +3, which is not unusual for a long war that's had a long limited war. But their German collapse can be very quick. It's amazing how it happens in this game, especially along in 1944 when the Allies are just getting an offensive. You know, they're getting blitz markers every turn. They've got strong HQs. They got plenty of air power. And they've got better delay DRMs than the Germans do. They're going to be getting better fighter equipment in that'll outmatch the Germans in the SK game. And already I think the Allies have won. Where's the Italian fleet located? They should have a fleet out here. I gotta find that kind of stuff. Where did I put the Italian fleet? Seems to be missing. Let's have a quick look in the card here. fleet headquarters, so it's Fleet 2, wherever Fleet 2 is. Oh, I bet I put it in Gibraltar. Yeah, I bet it's there. Okay. Yeah, that's a good place for it. Is it there? I don't see it there. The Italian fleet must be located. Where are you? Probably somebody's going to tell me exactly where it is when they look at this video. But anyway, that's the Allied fleet. Hold on, let me see if I can locate this. I'm pausing this for a second. Good Lord, look at this. I've put it here in Crete. Now, Crete can only get supplied airbase if I have supplies going to it. So I have a supply convoy here. I don't know if I can afford. I must have had operations over here where I needed to have that over here, but I think at this stage, this is too far out. It's nice to have an air base here, but I don't even have a German air base here. I have an Italian fleet base, but not an air base. And did I take the Italian? There's the fleet. Doesn't look like I've used Italy as a partner country here. Don't know if I played all this. So these are the kinds of things you have to go back and check. So we can see what we played out here. Axis played. No. Don't have any of those partnership country cards played yet. Discarded cards. Okay. Played. Doesn't look like the Axis have played any. This can't be right. Obviously, they played a lot of minor cards as well. Let's take a look in the deck for the Axis here. So the deck, German deck, Stung Europa, Citadel, National Redoubt, Partnership has not been played. So probably what I'll do before I come back here and play this, I'll set up these cards. This might be one of the cards. I might have looks like I wanted to play that as soon as possible. Looks like I was going for sort of a super weapon strategy here since I'm playing bombers against the Russians. I think I'm trying to figure out a way to stop them from being so annoying. As you know, if we have the bombers and production bombers in the delay box, so we can go to the turn track. And although this is difficult to see, you know, the delays for the Soviets are Axis jet fighter production, Euro bomber production. So it looks like that's what I was trying to do strategically. It was heading to try to stop the Russians. I know what a juggernaut they can become in these long games where they last, for an extra year, basically. So that seems to be the strategy for them. Do I have any kind of cohesive strategy for the Allies yet? Let's take a look at their cards here. We're just getting the U.S. into the war, so they only have a few things they can do. But some of the common cards, what's this, wartime footing? This will be another card that'll be, you want to get some of these in. There's a logistics marker in here, some air forces and things like that. Start build up some of these assets here during this first year of war, and maybe try to, in 43, well, it's going, we are in 43, but by 44 we have to have achieved some kind of strategic advantage, and I have to decide whether it's going to be the Tunisian campaign strategy or the Spanish campaign strategy. It's going to have to be one or the other. I've tried doing Overlord before the Overlord stuff gets in, and it often just gets crushed. The Germans are still too strong. They have too many offensive weapons left by then. You have to wait until 44 when they've played those out. Actually, it'll be 45 in this war, where they've played. Case Blue's gone. The last offensives are gone. They start running out of, like, Fifth Europa. That gives them 2 blitzes. So you might, say, well, Fifth Europa, do I want to wait till I have a blitz in the summertime? After that, we're not going to do SS Europa. There's no chance of an automatic victory. So you got Walk am Rhein. Walk am Rhein. I know it's not Walk am Rhein. Okay, Walk am Rhein. That's their last major offensive card. Once, sorry, we also have Citadel. So it's usually best to have Citadel played before you start invading across the channel. Just from bitter experience, the Germans will hammer the hell out of it. They can afford to trade space for time in Russia, and they'll send all that stuff and all the blitz markers and everything they got to try to push the Allies back into the sea. And often, if they're not bottled up in Cherbourg, they're lucky if that's all that happens to them. Let me put it to you like that. That's based on a lot of experience with this game. Not to say that I have as much experience as of other people do, but I certainly have a lot more than some of the other guys I've been playing with. And there's certain pitfalls that can happen. Another pitfall to watch out for, let's just mention it right now, elephant in the room. I don't know why they went to all sorts of trouble here in the Adriatic making these Allied danger zones because of the air power here. So you can't really invade unless you have an air base within range. Why didn't they do that here next to Genoa? This is a perfect hex where this should have been done. This should be an Allied danger zone. If this means that if you don't garrison Genoa, Turin, and Bologna, and this hex, and probably even this one, you gotta stack the hell out of this in defense because they can get a fleet up into here. If they couldn't get a fleet in here, then you wouldn't have to worry about this attack so much. And obviously, once they get into Corsica, they can get an air unit in there, and so then you'd have the air power. But I think it should be mandatory that this is a danger zone. For some reason, they overlook the most obvious ones, and then nobody invades in the Adriatic, as I recall. Maybe there's a bunch of people that were invading in the Adriatic. I didn't know about that, and so it was a problem. Here's another danger zone that should be a danger zone right here. Okay, there's no British air base within range. There's no possibility of being able to, if you look at all these land hexes next to that. This should be a danger zone. They went and made the Baltic a danger zone. But, this is not a normal place for the Western Allies to invade, and usually the Russians don't have anything to invade with because they never get a fleet. So, of all the places to make this like a super duper dangerous Axis zone, watch out, don't. They didn't put them in the most obvious places, which are around Denmark. There should be one here to prevent the Danish gambit. So now that means the Germans have to garrison the hell out of this. Now, this is typical of these guys. They make a design for effect decision because they want the Germans to be garrisoning the hell out of there, but they don't want to make it mandatory. So if you want to take the risk and you want to not garrison the area around Copenhagen and Bremen and all of this area right here, okay, let me just specifically, I'll write on the map here, right here. And then the other one is down here, the Genoa Basin. I just showed you that one though, but so they're making you do it by not putting that as a danger zone. But it would just be a logical place to make it a danger zone, so you don't have to garrison like crazy there. I don't know. I'm sure they had their reasons, but they also had their reasons for years and decades and to not have Scapa Flow on the map, and now it's there. So, and it should have probably always been there, but they thought it was why you wouldn't have the most strategic base the British had on the map of a strategic game, I cannot fathom. But I'm sure I mentioned this before, so I won't belabor the point. Okay, so that's it. We've talked about everybody but the Russians. So let's have a look at them. They're in pretty strong position here. They've stopped the Germans here. Now it's becoming into fall and winter. The Russians are going to try to get another. They already got their Air Force, I guess. It's probably on the turn track here. Let's take a look. Need to zoom this back out. Yeah, there's the Russian Air Force coming in. No, that's the interceptor. So maybe the Russian Air Force is already... Oh, there it is coming in here. Right up here. Okay, so they got the Russian Air Force coming in. They're going to start ramping up for their 42 and 43. Kursk thing is happening. The Germans probably will. I've played it before. I'm not very all the way through where the Germans use Citadel to threaten an attack and then just pull way back, kind of not taking the time to destroy a bunch of Russian steppes, but giving up a lot of space so the Russians can't get there for their summer offensive. I'm not so sure that will really work out. I do think the Germans probably have to fight them and do a massive exchange of personnel and equipment in a Kursk type battle, a running mobile battle. And it's all going to be a matter of kind of who gets luckier, I think. Or if I make a mistake with one side and don't see it, and vice versa. Usually these games are fraught with errors. It's really hard to play the defense perfectly and not make a mistake. You've got a lot of experts over there on BGG who think they're experts, and they will make mistakes left and right all the time. I guarantee you. Don't ever be intimidated by someone who's blowing their smoke over there on BGG because they act like they know what they're talking about. Now, there are some guys over there who know some things, who are a little more sedate about their statements, and these are guys who played the game many, many, many times. They've seen stuff that I've never seen, I'm sure of it, and I think that the best thing about judging a person's experience is not how much they talk and not how much they know the rules, but how much they actually play and get it right when they do play. There are so many games that are played that never get past 1942, especially, somebody quits. This game sucks. I can't learn this. People don't ever play into 43. They don't play into 44 and 45, so they don't know how to play in 44 and 45. I myself, it took me 10 games before we ever got into a 44 game because the Germans would make some mistakes or they would win outright. Okay. And I have to tell you, I was usually on the receiving end of that. So, because there's some good players out there and I'm not the best. I'm not bad, but I'm not the best. All right. Enough pontification, speaking of which, right? So I think I've covered everything here. We're going into 44 as if it's basically 43, so it should be exciting. I hope you enjoy this, watch this, like, subscribe, make comments, go ahead. Just say anything you want. I'm happy to answer anything. I'd like to have dialogue with people about these things. A lot of my followers are ASL players or Napoleonic players, so they don't get into this. I've probably got too much of a diverse range of games compared to the range of videos that I do. I just don't do enough videos. I really, to satisfy the clientele that I'd like to develop, I probably need to have 3 videos a week going out. One for ASL, one for this or other strategic game, one for Napoleonic games. And then there's Space Empires 4X. There's all sorts of stuff bouncing around in my head. So, all right. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.